Hi, we're at quorum.
Okay, then let's get started. So welcome everybody to the February land use meeting of Community Board 8. And we will dive right into the agenda and start with item number 1, which is the public hearing on 250 East 83rd Street and the transit easement certification there. So I think we will turn it over to the applicant if they are ready to start and give us their presentation.
Okay, let me get them lined up. And actually, who's going to be joining your presentation?
Can you unmute me?
You're unmuted now.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'll be giving the presentation, but there are people from our team over here. It's Herschel Torkian. He's the owner of the site. There's Jim Power, who's with Kramer Levin, and Robert Laudenschlager from Slice Architects. So with that, can I share my screen? Okay.
You can, yeah.
Sure. I'm here also, Herschel Torkian.
Yes, Herschel. Yes.
Hi, and Jim Power, Kramer Levin.
Okay, can all of you see my screen? Okay, thank you.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Good evening, Chair Squire and members of the Land Use Committee and Board. I'm Meenakshi Srinivasan, Senior Land Use and Zoning Advisor at Kramer Levin, Naftalis and Frankel, representing 83 Owners LLC, the applicant of this project. As I said before, I'm joined by Herschel Torkian and the Torkian Group, who are owners of the site, James Power from Kramer Levin, and Bob Laudenschlager from Slice Architects. So we're here to present an application for a joint certification by the City Planning Commission and the MTA as to whether a transit easement volume is required at the property located at 250 East 83rd Street. The property is located within the Special Transit Land Use District. I understand that your board may have not seen many of these applications, so I thought that it'd be helpful to give you some background and as to why this application is before you. The Special Transit Land Use District was created in 1974, close to 50 years ago, to provide public access at strategic locations to the future 2nd Avenue subway. Any development within the Special Transit Land Use District, pursuant to ZR Section 9504, is required to obtain a joint certification from City Planning Commission and the MTA whether transit easement volume is required. The process requires filing of an application at the Department of City Planning prior to building permits. The application is then referred out to the MTA and the Community Board. The MTA determines within its referral period whether an easement volume is required. And if no easement volume is required by the MTA, City Planning certifies to the Buildings Department that no easement is required as the property. In this case, the MTA has already submitted a letter to DCP confirming that a transit easement volume is not required for the property. The property is located on the southwest corner of 2nd Avenue and East 83rd Street within a C19 district along 2nd Avenue and with a small portion in the R8B mid-block area along East 83rd Street. As noted, previously the site is in the Special Transit Land Use District as seen in the zoning map. It's located over here. The property or zoning lot is approximately 10,388 square feet. The surrounding land uses are primarily residential in the mid-blocks and residential with ground floor retail along the avenues. The avenues are zone C19, which allows a 10 FAR, bonusable to 12 FAR with inclusionary housing bonus, and the mid-blocks are typically zoned R8B. These are photographs of our site, and as you can see, this is our site over here. This is East 83rd Street, this is 2nd Avenue, and the site is currently vacant. These are some photographs of the surrounding area. Immediately to the north of our site is an MTA facility, and diagonally across from our site between East 83rd and East 84th Street is an entrance into the 2nd Avenue subway through a set of escalators. As currently filed at the Department of Buildings, the project is a residential building with ground floor retail along the avenue. The project will be developed using the inclusionary housing bonus. The proposed building is completely as of right, and we're not asking for any waivers. And the application before the City Planning Commission is really a ministerial action and does not require a discretionary review. As noted previously, the MTA has submitted a letter that no easement is required at this location. It's the letter that they provided to the City Planning Commission. In addition to the letter, we believe there's several reasons why an easement volume is not required at this location, both from an infrastructure standpoint as well as from a practical standpoint. First, the property is located in an area where phase 1 of the 2nd Avenue subway, so approximately between East 63rd Street and 96th Street, was recently completed. It was open to the public in 2017. Second, there's a major entrance with escalators just across the street from our site. So our site is located over here, and here's a major entrance to the southern platform of the 2nd Avenue subway station at East 86th Street. So this is between East 83rd and East 84th Street. In addition, there are 2 other entrances and access to the northern platform. This is East 86th Street, and this is the northeast and southeast corner. The third reason is, and you can see from this drawing, that the platform below grade ends short of where our property is located. So there's actually no physical connection over there. In addition to that, the area which has public access within the lower level concourse ends approximately 150 feet from where our site is. So in fact, if we were to provide an easement that the MTA could actually use for the 2nd Avenue subway, it would require them actually digging below grade and extending the platform. Further, it would require MTA to sort of reorganize all their operations, which is at the southern end, is not publicly accessible. And I think both things together would be a pretty major and significant infrastructure undertaking at significant costs, and just a few years after really this phase has been open to the public. And lastly, and you've probably heard a lot in the press, the MTA is really focused right now and working on the 2nd phase of the 2nd Avenue subway. So the first phase was completed. It takes you up to 96th Street, and then from 96th to 125th Street is the 2nd phase, and that will provide access to people from the community of East Harlem and Central Harlem to the subway. So for those reasons, along with the letter that was provided by the MTA, we believe that there's a strong rationale and reason for not warranting a transit easement volume at this location. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. So for members of the public who have comments or questions, if you and members of the board too, you can raise your hand. Members of the public, we're going to limit you to 2 minutes. But if anybody has a comment or question or motion, go ahead and raise your hands and we will go to you. So I see Craig later.
I'll just remind everybody that they can raise their hand by going to the reactions icon at the bottom of the screen and pressing the raise hand button there. Or if you're calling in from the phone, it's *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute.
Yeah, one other item briefly, we're going to try something new this time, which is if you are raising your hand, if you're on the board and you're raising your hand with a privileged item like a point of information or a point of order or something like that, if you could just indicate that to Will in the chat so that he can let me know, that will be helpful. So go ahead, Craig.
Go ahead, Craig, you can unmute.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I would like to make a resolution, and if seconded, speak to it, please. My proposed resolution is resolved. Community Board 8 Manhattan concurs with the MTA that an easement is not required for the proposed development at 250 East 83rd Street, and requests that the CPC certify that that due to the location not providing opportunities to provide, certify that finding, excuse me, due to the location not providing opportunities to provide improved connectivity or accessibility to the 86th Street subway station. Be it further resolved that Community Board 8 Manhattan considers the need for expanded and improved transit accessibility to be paramount, and requests that any proposed development in the special transit land use districts along 2nd Avenue prioritize and incorporate into their design accessibility upgrades necessary to achieve the addition of elevators connecting street and station mezzanine levels on the southern ends of the 72nd, 86th, and 96th Street Q train stations to supplement the existing elevators on the northern ends of each station.
Okay, I see Barry has seconded it, so go ahead.
Thank you. I think my resolution is pretty self-explanatory. I think the presentation here was pretty clear. There really isn't much purpose or benefit of a transit easement in this case, but I think it's really critical that as a board, we are very hyper-focused on improving accessibility. I think we all recognize that the 2nd Avenue subway is slightly deficient when it comes to redundancy for elevators. I think we've all seen frustrations when we've seen elevators and escalators that are out of service for what are essentially brand new stations. And I think it's really critical that as we look forward, that we try to rectify those issues and put notice out to developers that we expect that anyone who is bound to the rules of the special transit district zones, that they should expect to be able to help us achieve our goals of improved accessibility and getting these elevators that are sorely needed in place.
And just to briefly, your motion is a motion to approve, just so everybody's clear on that.
Right. I don't know if there was a motion to approve because we're not approving anything. I guess my motion was to concur with the MTA's finding, and that the City Planning Commission certify that finding. I think that's the official process, but not unless I'm wrong, which is possible.
Okay, my impression was we were approving or disapproving, and ultimately, obviously, it's up to CPC to make their decision. But in any event, I just want to make sure everybody's clear on the thrust of what you're
right, because I thought we were just approving the easement question. I didn't know if that we were taking on anything beyond that.
I think on the question of I see what you mean. But yeah, so the idea is to the approval of the requested removal of the easement. In concurrence with the MTA on that point, that it's not needed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, next let's go to Elaine Walsh.
My question would be, and right now, yes, we could process the easement request. But as the 2nd Avenue subway is developed and it goes up north to 125th, there will be an increase in usage. And am concerned, and I don't know constructionally or whatever, that we might need to expand the platform in the area we're talking about. So how does this play into that issue?
Does the applicant want to respond to
that? You can unmute. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think, we rely on really the MTA sort of guiding us on that front. So, and that's what has been traditionally done when there's an easement application before city planning and the MTA reviews its plans and makes, a judgment on that or a determination. I think these larger questions about whether over a period of time there should be improvements to the subway. Those are really within sort of the bailiwick of the MTA and not us. And obviously you have a relationship as a board with the MTA, and we're presuming that that will continue in the future. But from our perspective, I think the application before you is very clear cut. We're talking about one site over here, we're talking about this moment in time, and there is no plans for the MTA to do anything with our site. And just physically, it's a tremendous undertaking to try and connect to our site.
Right, I understand that. But my concern is, and I've seen this over time, things change. And by supporting your application, are we then excluding you from any role that might be necessary when the needs change? Is there a sunset clause? I mean, how do we do this? Because I understand what you're saying, but I am concerned, having seen things change over time, that we may need a role with you.
Right, now, I understand that. But I can just say that the way this portion or this phase of the subway has been developed, and I think we have to recognize it was completed very recently in 2017, that its infrastructure that's in place, maybe it can be improved in the future, but it is limited, and that infrastructure doesn't extend to 83rd Street, to the south side of 83rd Street.
Outside. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Billy.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to support Craig's resolution. I just wanted to thank George Janes, who supplied the memo that we all were emailed, and to thank Will and Russell for thinking to reach out to George to get his analysis. I found it incredibly persuasive, and I wanted to highlight a couple points, which I hope will inform any, to the extent we are providing comments, which I hope we will. I think a lot of what George said should go in there. One is he highlighted how an elevator, for example, at this location would mean extending the mezzanine level to the south, not a trivial solution, George mentioned, and this also is in the presentation that we just heard. But George adds, if the community board is concerned about the lack of additional elevators at the station, excessive outages, or simply that the station design requires two different elevators, you should make those concerns heard. And I think we should all be concerned. I've seen this elevator at the 86th Street station already be out many, many times. I've seen escalator outages many, many times. Accessibility is a huge issue throughout the city, both the fact that about 75% of stations are not accessible, but even stations like this one clearly has huge infrastructure and accessibility needs. So I just want to thank George, and I hope those comments and observations will go into our comment, because as George mentioned, if we do make comments now, then the next time an application comes up similar to this, the MTA may give it consideration when they consider whether an easement is necessary. Thanks.
Thank you. And I agree. Yes, I'm very happy to have the memo from George. So next, let's go to Barry.
I call the question.
Okay. I don't see. Okay, there is a second from Barbara. There's three hands up right now. So why don't we'll go to Kaz and Marco and Rebecca, and then we'll cut it off there, and we'll go to a vote at that point. Just because we've been haven't been discussing this for very long. So Kaz, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to call the question also, but I've got a couple of questions. The MTA is a new design. It's been 2 years, 3 years since the completion. So how can we be asking new constructions to basically rebuild the MTA? We know the inefficiencies of the MTA. I think we should take it up with the MTA rather than new buildings coming up. As far as, the why are we hearing the special zone? The MTA has been completed. There's not going to be any more new construction. So, this is a rhetorical question. I'm not expecting an answer, but should we be hearing it now, even though the MTA has completed, it's built? What else can be done that the MTA can do as far as this construction site that they should get a specific request from the MTA that it's okay for them to build? I'm just confused with the whole system. Thanks.
So yeah, I mean, essentially what the applicant is trying to do is remove the easement, and the MTA consents to that, but we as a community board get to weigh in on it. And so this is our opportunity to do that. And so the resolution is to concur with the MTA's finding, but we have the opportunity to do that. And so so that's really essentially what we're doing here. But it looks like maybe I mean, if I don't think the applicant needs to respond, but you're welcome to if you want.
I just want to note that, we're not asking for an easement to be removed. Every time an application comes before the MTA, they determine whether an easement is required. So we have to go through the process. We actually agree with some of what is being said today. It seems sort of an odd question to ask because this phase has been completed and the whole special district was created on the premise that the subway is going to come online at some point, and putting the infrastructure in place or the easements in place for construction in the future. But this phase has been completed. So in some ways, we're kind of bound by the process, which is to come through this, file an application, have it reviewed by the MTA. The MTA is determined that there's no easement required. It's referred to the community board, and then it'll go back to city planning, and they'll certify it. So it's a pretty, it's a very ministerial action. And, for easements in the future or for areas that are yet to be developed, the community board comments, I think, are more relevant because there's something that's going to be put in place and is not in place as yet.
Okay, next let's go to Marco.
Thank you, Russell. The applicant make a very good case, and it is logical what she described. And with that element, she said that is not require an easement. An easement, what it is basically allowed at any time in the future to put an elevator, to put something, but doesn't affect the building itself and doesn't affect the floor area. It will be impacted, maybe minimum, but no deeply. That's one point. The station has been completed, you said. I agree with you. Absolutely, you're right. Yeah, usually I use that station frequently. I'm very healthy, very, very healthy. I run the steps. I'm very happy to do this exercise. It's a very long steps. But periodically I found it that the steps they are broken, meaning that what can they do, those people with disability, those people that they reach that dead end? That's what it is. It's a dead end. How are they gonna resolve this matter? Because sooner or later, those people, they will need this elevator, something, a second means of egress to get out from that station at 83rd Street. So it's true that DOT didn't plan and didn't thought at the time when they do the first development. But with the future, the city has to be more in compliance and more directly with those people with disabilities. And so to maintain the easement is nothing wrong. It's a couple of square feet that doesn't impact in the whole development. So that is my point of view, that at this time that is saying, don't take it too much. But the point is, at least those people with disability, they can use the other stations too. And that is one point. The other point that I would like to raise, how tall is going to be the building? You said it's inclusionary housing. How tall is going to be?
As filed at the buildings department, it's about 23 stories. But we are looking to get additional air rights, and so it may become taller, but what's been filed at the buildings department is 23 stories. And I just want to point out that, you know, in any sort of situation, whatever is being proposed over here is completely in accordance with the zoning regulations and is as of right.
Can you disclose how high is going to be the building, please, if you mind? I'm
Right.
being persistent.
Right, as said, as filed at DOB, it's 23 stories right now as filed. I mean, we're exploring additional air rights, but that's what we're at right now.
You know, ultimately, you know, this is about the easement. Yeah, I don't want to stay too far afield.
Yeah.
So we're going to go to Rebecca, and then, as I mentioned, you know, Barry's already called the question. So I wanted to hear a few more comments because we hadn't been discussing this too long before the question had been called. But Rebecca will be the last one because the question's been called. But go ahead, Rebecca.
Oh, sorry, Russell. I was just super excited to thank all my fellow board members for shouting out accessibility and talking about how important it is. You know, at one point it felt like myself, Lori, and a few others were the only ones here at the board beating this drum. So it's really refreshing to hear people talk about the needs of people with disabilities and why it's important to have an easement here. It's unfortunate the MTA is saying when it's not necessary, but in my experience as a disabled person, the MTA never cares about me and never feels my access is necessary. So I'm really happy that we're injecting these needs into the conversation tonight, even though it's not going to happen at 83rd Street. But as Marco said one day, you know, people with disabilities will need a second means of egress. We will need another elevator. We will need more access at the 2nd Avenue subway line. So I'm just very happy to hear us talking about these issues tonight and hopefully moving the ball down the field one way on this. So thanks for letting me share my feelings.
Sure. Okay, so the question's been called, so we're going to go to voting. And can I turn it over to the secretaries?
Yeah, let's lower all the hands. And then if you would like to vote no, abstain, or not vote for cause, please raise your hand. Anthony?
No.
Chuck?
Not voting for cause. My firm is representing the applicant here.
Marco?
Abstain.
Seeing no other hands, the resolution passes and we will, oh, Elaine?
Vote no. I vote
The
no.
resolution got it. Resolution passes. We'll have the vote total for you shortly.
Okay, thanks. So now let's move to the next item on the agenda, which is the continued discussion of 3 East 89th Street. So last month we had a presentation from the applicant, and there were a number of questions that were asked during that meeting. And then we also, board members are able to submit written questions to the applicant from which, to which we got answers prior to this meeting. So we will, we're not going to, redo the presentation or anything like that, but we'll take comments and questions from board members and the public. And I'll just, again, from the public, it'll be, you'll be limited to 2 minutes. So let's go first to Richard's iPad. And if you can just identify yourself fully, that would be great, please.
Okay, and sorry, really quickly, Daniel, if there's other people that I need to unmute from the applicant, please let me know.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Richard Armstrong. I'm the director of the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum. We are located at 2 East 89th Street, directly across the street from Salon 94. We find her in the gallery a very good neighbor. I think the plan has tremendous attractiveness to it. And I think if people have witnessed the changes in the building over the last 2 years, both externally and internally, it's quite evident the degree of improvement that Salon 94 has brought to the site. So we consider the gallery and its plans a very, very good neighbor.
Thank you. All right, next, let's go to Friends of the Upper East Side. I understand that they have a 3-minute presentation, which we'll allow.
Hi, Russell. Thank you for the allowance. Laura Sekin, representing Friends of the Upper East Side Historic District. 3 East 89th Street is a unique building as it was never intended to operate as an independent structure. The townhouse, built in 1915 as an extension of 1083 Fifth Avenue, was later donated to the National Academy of Design and became part of a larger campus. With this in mind, we acknowledge the necessary addition of mechanical, administrative, and auxiliary functions. Though not an interior landmark, Friends applauds the applicant for maintaining the overall layout and restoring many of the remarkable interiors. Therefore, we understand the need to increase the building's bulk to accommodate these additional functions. The proposed commercial gallery use ensures this distinguished building's continued contribution to the cultural history and character of the Museum Mile Historic District and of the Upper East Side. We believe this to be a felicitous repurposing of the building and appreciate the applicant's effort in establishing a strong and public presence in the neighborhood, including the sensitive restoration work at the front facade. We gladly support the use waiver sought. We do have some concern about the cumulative impact of increased bulk and height due to the residential portion proposed at the 6th floor. Much of the neighborhood's special character comes from the uniform street wall of the main blocks, a feature recognized and protected by the RAB contextual zoning district and sliver law regulations. However, Friends recognizes several aspects of this building and its location distinguish it from typical mid-block structures. Among those are the fact that the townhouse itself is situated within 2 zoning districts and is already non-compliant with most of the zoning variation it seeks. Additionally, this portion of the block is mostly comprised of larger institutional structures with very few existing rear yards, not the typical residential RAB block seen elsewhere in the neighborhood. With that in mind, Friends does not object to the requested waivers for the maximum height in RAB district, the high limitation for narrow buildings, the minimum required rear yard, and the minimum distance between buildings on a single zoning lot. We believe that special permits can be beneficial to the community when the situation is indeed special, such as the case of 3 East 89th Street. Friends staunchly advocates for the preservation of the special character of our mid-blocks, and we expect that these special permits, if approved, will not serve as precedent for additional encroachment into other RAB mid-blocks. Thank you.
Thank you. One other thing I'll note is that the applicant provided an opportunity for board members to do a site visit, and so a number of us did do that. So we appreciate that as well. So before we go on to additional comments here, I just want to go back to Rebecca for the official results from the last item.
Hi, thank you. The totals are 34 yes, 2 no, 1 abstention, and 1 not voting for cause.
Thank you. Okay, next let's go to Michelle Birnbaum.
Thank you, Russell. Yeah, I just want to remind everybody that this is a zoning issue. I mean, it was very gracious of the applicant to invite everybody to the site. I'm sure it's quite impressive. And I'm sure everybody who did go really enjoyed seeing it. It's an impressive restoration. However, that is not what we're voting on. We're voting on the zoning part of this, and it is in breach. And I think I'm not going to comment any further. I read the answers to the questions. I'm sure you all did too. You know whether or not they satisfy you. So I'm not going to relitigate all of that. But I just want to remind everybody that don't think about the bells and whistles necessarily, because it really has not been firmly proven that this applicant couldn't satisfy their programmatic needs without the zoning, the variances. So I'm just reminding everybody of that to focus on that. It's not about how pretty it is or how wonderful it is. That's not it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I see we have a member of the public, Meng Singwan Feng. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. If not, I apologize. But you have 2 minutes.
Mango, look for a button on your screen to say confirm unmuting. There you go.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. My name is Meng Pang, and I am a mixed media artist. I'm also a resident of this community and this community board for many years. And I'm here to speak in support of Salon 94's proposal. And the most important reason that I believe that I support this is because during the most challenging of times throughout history, and even currently as we navigate this pandemic, we look to art to help get us through these times. And unfortunately, so many artists have been driven out of the city in order to sustain themselves and their work, which also means so much talent and culture has been driven out of the city as well. And what Salon 94 is creating is such a rare opportunity for artists to be able to create, to live, and to show their works, which I know positively not only impacts the artists, but our community and even beyond to New York State in large. And as a working artist throughout my adult life, showing coast to coast and selling in various galleries, this is such a rare opportunity to have, especially in Manhattan, to be able to live and work and create. So I hope that you can consider this and the positive impacts of having this in our area. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to continue with members of the public before we start going back to members of the board. So next, let's go to Lo Vandervalk.
Lo, you can unmute. Lo, please confirm unmuting on your screen.
Yes, hello. Oh.
Yeah, we hear you.
Oh. This is Lo Vanderbalk speaking on behalf of Carnegie Hill Neighbors. We have been in discussion with the applicant because basically we would support this application if certain changes could be made, and we have suggested these changes to them and they are considering them, although it may not be in time for this meeting. I wonder if you could show the PDFs I sent to Will. If not, on the screen.
Yes, but your time is still going, so you'll hear a buzzer whenever it goes off.
Okay. Okay, so we're in the phase now, the second phase of 74-711. The first phase was LPC, but now we're dealing with the findings of the City Planning Commission. And the findings are to mitigate the findings are that the negative impacts on neighboring buildings in terms of light and air, for example, will be diminished as far as possible, or there will be no such impacts, ideally speaking. So we think there are impacts, and we're suggesting two changes. One is a reconfiguration of the penthouse by pulling it back 4 feet. That's 4 feet up, which is four feet to the north. It's the pullback is actually 4 feet and 5 inches. We're recommending. This will increase the gap between the south wall of the penthouse and the north wall of the 1080 Fifth Avenue, which is the corner building. Hello. So that's our basic proposal. Our second proposal is on page 2.
Let's just do 30 seconds on page 2.
Yeah. Is that we would like to lessen the angles at, we'd like to lessen the angle at the fourth and then third and fourth floor window in the rear, so that there's a 5-foot space between the rear lot line and this building, allowing light and air. And coming back to the first change, I just want to say one thing, that the area would be compensated by a movement of the wall to the east, so that the total area of the penthouse would stay the same. We are hoping for those changes, and if those changes were enacted, we could support this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if the applicant has a response to that or wants to comment on that. You don't have to, but feel free to weigh in if you would like to.
We're going to go through our speakers first.
Beg your pardon? Yes,
We're
sure.
gonna
So next, let's go to Lori Simmons.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Lori Simmons, and I'm an artist, photographer, and filmmaker. As a lifelong New Yorker, I'm especially proud that my work is included in the permanent collections of our local institutions, the Met, the Guggenheim, MoMA, the Whitney, PS1, and the Jewish Museum. I'm here tonight to speak in strong support of Salon 94 and its proposal before all of you. I've exhibited with Salon 94 for a decade, and my relationship with founder Jeannie Greenberg-Rohatyn dates back to 2003, when we worked on a film together that premiered at MoMA in 2005. Salon 94 is an enormously important space within New York's art community, and I believe it deserves to be supported, uplifted right now by all of you, its community. Its founder, Jeannie, has always had a curatorial focus on women artists, feminist works, and artists of color. And because of this prestige and heritage, Salon 94 is able to attract world-renowned artists to show their work. I would encourage everyone here to visit the gallery by simply walking in and enjoying incredible works of art at no cost. Jeannie has restored the gallery and created the footprint that people see today, but the space needs improvements for it to be sustainable over the long term. The improvements that Salon 94 is seeking are modest from a physical point of view, but from a functional perspective, they would be transformative for the gallery. The improvements would give the creative teams, artists, and curators the space they need to mount shows and projects. There would also be a new world-class library in the building, which would be available to the community as well, and a new artist residency program within the building, something so valuable to working artists. As someone who has devoted my life to creative expression, I ask that this community board please support Salon 94's proposal this evening, and I thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Hunter Millington.
Hi, this is actually Jessica Millington, Hunter's wife. Can you hear me? Because I can't find myself. on
Yep,
this
yep,
Zoom.
we hear
Okay,
you.
as long as you can hear me and
2
I
minutes
don't,
are
you
running,
don't
so
see
go
me.
ahead.
Okay. I'm all for art. I think the restoration on that building was gorgeous. We live across the street at 4 East 89th, and I'm new to this discussion, but I just wanted to know if the penthouse, quote unquote, addition is on the Fifth Avenue side or on the 89th Street side.
And if you have other comments or questions, can you ask them in the remainder of your 2 minutes? Because the applicant can answer, but I just, you know, your time
Yeah,
is.
it's just, I need to just be clarified what, because I am new to this group, what are the, and very briefly, what are the issues that are going on? All I heard was penthouse, and I thought, if I have to live through another renovation, and I'm all for the art world and I support it 100%, but I just wanted to be clear on what is exactly happening and which Fifth Avenue or 89th Street. Those are my questions.
So one thing that, okay, and so we'll go to the applicant in a minute here, but I just want to direct folks, I think it's on the presentation. So this is the, now the second meeting that we've had on this item. So last month they came before us and they gave a presentation that laid out all of the proposals and all of the stuff that we're doing. So you can see the presentation on the community board website. So, you know, in the agenda for this meeting, you can see it. So that's going to have more information for you.
Thank you.
But then also, I think the applicant can also answer that. And again, you know, if you want to answer that,
Sure.
why don't you answer that now?
Sure, this is Stuart Beckerman. I'm the project attorney.
Stuart.
Hi. So the building that we're, the special permit seeking only relates to an enlargement and a change of use for the building on 89th Street, not at 1083 Fifth. As you may know, that National Academy of Design formerly comprised 3 buildings, which each of which has been sold off to a different buyer. 1083 Fifth has been returned to its original use as a single-family residence, and they already have gotten approvals from Landmarks for a 7th floor and a bulkhead addition on their property. What we're seeking here is to build enlargements on all floors, but the first floor, the enlargements at the 2nd and 3rd and 4th and 5th floors are mainly in varying degrees to the side and the back, but just minimally on the upper floors. And then on what is now then we're going to add a roof addition, which is really what people have been talking about, which will be set back 55.5 feet from the street. So it will be barely visible from the street at all, except for certain angles up and down 89th Street. And that's where it will be seen, but from directly across the street, it cannot be seen at all.
When you say from directly across the street of 89th Street, looking north, cannot be seen?
From the street, the opposite side of the street. If you're
Okay,
standing,
but if you're on the 10th floor, you'll be able to see it.
yes, you will.
But it'll be beautiful and there'll be a green roof. So you'll be looking down on a garden. So, and it'll be small. It's very small.
Right.
It's very small, and whatever your view is from above now, it will be really, really improved, because what you are looking on now is all of the equipment from the building on the right of me, which and my building as well. And
Right.
all of that equipment will be removed and hidden. And you will see green and a small cap on the back of the building.
And how long, I mean, I know in New York, you know, renovation.
So I'm going to tell you that's a great question, and I want to answer it very quickly. I don't have a lot of time to do this project because, as everybody knows, the art world has seasons, and we are supposed to open in the late September with an exhibition. So it will take me the summer to do all of this work. We are working with a very clever architect, Raphael Vignoli, and we are thinking about the architecture as basically driving it in and putting it on top. It will be made off-site.
Okay, thank you.
We're very quick. We're very quick. we did the entire renovation over COVID.
All right, thank you. Let's go next to Marilyn Minter from the public.
Hi, I'm Marilyn Minter. I'm an artist, video artist, and painter and photographer. And I've been working with Jeannie since 2003. And I mean, I think Lori, who's my good friend, said everything perfectly about what a great gallery she is, what a good gallerist she is, and what a wonderful opportunity this is going to be for the neighborhood. If you haven't seen the space yet, I've been all over the world and I've looked at galleries and museums my entire life, and this is the best space to show art that I've never ever seen. So, I mean, I think the neighborhood's going to be really lucky. And I love the gallery from the year 2003, when she only showed women and people of color. I mean, nobody did that in 2003. And Jeannie's a pioneer, and I'm thrilled to be showing in the new space. And I hope you guys approve, because it's going to be even better than it is now. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, let's go to M. Weinseer from the public. And if you can just state your name before you start.
It's Michael Weinseer. Am I on now?
Yep, go ahead.
Perfect. So I'm appearing on behalf of the Board of Directors and tenant shareholders of 1080 Fifth Avenue with respect to the pending application. 1080, as you know, is the residential building that's right next to and just to the west of 3 East 89th. While 1080 views the renovation of 3 East 89th as additive to the neighborhood, we absolutely unequivocally oppose the proposed rooftop expansion. In the pending application, the owner is already proposing to effectively add an entirely new 5th floor, which will be 12 feet in height. The proposed new 6th floor residential penthouse will add another 15 feet on top of that, effectively adding 2 full floors and increasing the actual height of the current 4-story building by 27 feet. The massive rooftop addition will be highly visible and permanently destroy the light, air, and space currently enjoyed by the families occupying numerous apartments spanning the entire courtyard at 1080 Fifth Avenue, just to create a single luxury penthouse apartment that a visiting artist may occasionally occupy, or that the owner of 389th may occasionally use to throw a party. The proposed penthouse residence is clearly unnecessary for the operation of the proposed commercial art gallery. It is nothing but a vanity addition to the building, particularly when the owner already provides in her application that the existing 4th floor and the proposed new 5th floor may be used for residential purposes. Make no mistake, 3 East 89th will operate as a privately owned high-end commercial art gallery, not a school or a museum or another type of nonprofit. The business will be operated to enrich an individual owner at the great expense of countless neighboring families whose homes will be permanently impaired as a result of the proposed rooftop addition. 1080 continues to strongly oppose the entire proposed rooftop addition, and we hope the Land Use Committee of CB8 continues to maintain CB8's previous objections. I'd also add that it is not a small cabin on top of the building, but rather a 15-foot
Your time is up. Thank you. Okay, next let's go. So that is it for members of the public. So let's go next to Sherry Weiner from the board.
Thank you, Russell. I'm a land use attorney, so zoning is very important to me, but I was one of the members of the board who did go to visit the site. And I have to tell you, the work that was done there was most impressive to improve the building, which wouldn't have been done otherwise. It would have been a deteriorating building. And I also went up on the roof where we got to see where the proposed penthouse is being placed. What we saw was surrounding buildings on both sides have already exceeded the height limit without permission. And this owner is actually coming to us for permission. Now I just heard Lo give his suggestions on improving where that penthouse will be located. And I think that would be a great improvement on the property. So I do support
granting the special permit, but ask that the applicant consider the request of the of Low Vanderbilt and move the location of the penthouse so it is not so visible. Thank you.
Okay, next, let's go to Elizabeth Ashby.
Yes, I think that we should all admire the restoration they've done to the front facade of this building. And I think that the use modification, turning it into the proposed gallery, the program they have, well fits within the confines of 74-711. But unfortunately, I do believe that the community board got it right years ago when we determined that we opposed the bulk modifications. I think they fall very far short of minimal adverse impacts, effects on both the building and, as neighbors have said, on the building next door. And I think this is particularly true of the penthouse. And I do think that that perhaps the solution is to scale back the residential components until they fit into the original envelope or as near as possible. And on the side, the city, this is for out-of-town artists, and the city, we have to admit, does have useful alternatives for out-of-town artists, and we call them hotels. And I hope that they will consider that solution instead. And perhaps we would have to split our position to support the use modifications and not support the bulk modifications.
Thank you. Next, let's go to Alita Camp.
Thank you. I love having art galleries and museums in the neighborhood. I belong to the Met and I view it almost in a way as my own personal museum because I can drop in there anytime I want. But let's not confuse programming with the land use elements of this particular proposal and say yes because the programming is well done or will be well done. So I just wanted to make that point because I know that everyone who's spoken in favor of it has spoken about the programming and very few have talked about the impact of this on the larger community, and there's a principle involved as well. So I don't understand how many residences are actually involved in this. I didn't see a clear answer in the question that the board members posed, and I didn't hear one the last time, so I'm not sure how many artists will be living there at once. Second, I believe that you're following perhaps the letter of the law, the letter of the deed restriction and of the zoning rules and landmark rules, but certainly not the spirit. The deed restriction refers to lot coverage, but I question whether lot coverage is solely limited to what's on the land itself and whether the increase in bulk and the increase in losing air and light by pushing out the rest of the building over what's already extending into the lot could possibly be accepted as additional lot coverage. The principle that I was referring to is a creep of these kinds of extensions of what's permitted under the zoning laws. And so your penthouse, you've already been grandfathered. You're supposed to be 60 feet tall. If you get the 94 feet that you want, and I'm not arguing that you should be anywhere below where you are, but to get the 94 feet would put you 50% over where you're supposed to be and 15 to 20% over what you're supposed to be in an R8B district. I view what the zoning requires as a budget. You have a budget of 79 feet, maybe go up a little bit more as we said at the landmarks committee, but not up to 94 feet. You're beyond your budget. I don't get to go first class because I tell the airlines I'd really like to, or I have a really good book I'm reading and it would give me pleasure. I don't do that, or it would give someone else pleasure too, to look at the pictures of my book sitting next to me in first class. I can afford coach. That's where I sit. And I think it's the same way about the height of the building. You bought the building knowing that it was limited to 79 feet and maybe go up a little bit, possibly, but certainly not a double-heighted penthouse. And I just think that that's wrong. So that's what I have to say. And again, I welcome you in the neighborhood. I think what you're doing with artists and all of your programming and your education and opportunities for the community are very, very welcome. You can't have too much art, in my opinion, but there must be a way to comply with what is required at the same time that you're providing all those opportunities for artists and for the community. Thank you. Thanks, Russell.
May I respond to Ms. Camp?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm Stuart Beckerman. I just want to respond to your characterization of the zoning, the deed restriction. The declaration of zoning lot development and easement, which was prepared by the National Academy of Design's attorneys before selling off the properties, is very clear. We are in full compliance with that ZELDA. What it says is that the existing developments, the existing 3 buildings together cumulatively already exceed lot coverage. So they put into there that any individual owner has the right to seek discretionary zoning approval, such as a special permit or a variance, or any of these zoning vehicles that are out there to fully utilize the floor area that they're entitled to under the ZELDA. So we are, even with our enlargement, we are way under in terms of the floor area that we're entitled to under the ZELDA and under zoning. We're actually entitled to close to 30,000 square feet. Our building as enlarged will be 19,000 square feet. So we will not in any way exceed lot coverage. The way lot coverage doesn't work vertically, it works horizontally. So the lot coverage is in place, we're not touching that. We are staying within the existing parameters of the lot coverage. So I just want to put that out there. And then we do have a right to seek a special permit. And this special permit, if I may, again, I think there's a lot of confusion out there. We are not seeking a change to the zoning. The zoning will remain in place as is. All we're doing is we're taking advantage of a special permit that was intended for this purpose. The purpose is to incentivize historic preservation, which we have already done, even though it has not been, even though the requirement doesn't kick in until after we get the special permit. We've already completed about 90% of our restoration work, and we can't wait to complete the rest. We've already established this, and I'm hearing there's no controversy, but there's been some objection to the commercial use here. I think most people who have visited the gallery appreciate that from a land use standpoint, this functions like any gallery, commercial or non-commercial. And in some ways, this is probably more inviting of the public than what was there before. So, and what Ms. Rowatin has done has been pretty remarkable for anyone who has visited the space. What she has done is she has respected the interior spaces as constructed. This was not built as an independent functioning building. It was built as an addition to the single family house. And then when the National Academy of Design incorporated into their larger 3-building complex, the decision was made to maintain the existing interior gallery spaces as is. And Ms. Rowatin understandably doesn't want to touch that space. Anyone who visits the galleries can appreciate that what she has done is pretty remarkable. And I think everyone who's been there fully embraces it and appreciates it. So I just want to put that out there, that the infrastructure that we're adding, I recall when Lowe came to visit the site, he even commented on these grand spaces and how we don't want to touch those spaces, but we need to add infrastructure to make it a functioning gallery. Any enlargement that we do will require some kind of a zoning waiver because of the constraints of the site and the zoning as it relates to our site. And I just want to echo something that was mentioned by the representative of the Friends of the Upper East Side. This is not a typical rear yard. We are surrounded by buildings. this doesn't feel like a typical residential rear yard that you see on a mid-block that is lined with residential buildings. And that's the whole purpose of the special permit. A special permit reflects a legislative determination by the City Planning Commission, and in this case, the Board of Estimate, before the City Council got involved in land use, the Board of Estimate made that determination that we should have a special permit for this purpose, to give property owners who own landmarks the ability to bring these buildings into the present time. And that's what we're doing here. And we're surrounded by taller buildings, and even 1085th, which is over 200 feet tall, the nearest residential window that faces us is 54.5 feet away, over 54 feet away. That is, how many people look out their windows if you're not facing the street and have a 54-foot clearance of the next building over. So I just want to give some context to a lot of what's being said today. I mean, I appreciate everything that everyone's saying, but I want to make sure that the facts are clear and straight.
I know Russell doesn't want a colloquy between us, and I'm sure no one else does either, much less you or your client. But I still adhere to what I said about the spirit of the law, which is that the increase in the rear yard that you're putting over what's already there does present an additional, I guess, closed feeling perhaps of closing in. But without that, because you're right, and I'm a lawyer, from reading the deed restriction, it only talks about lot coverage, and I understand that it's horizontal. As for the roof, it's 2 additional stories. You came before, or Jeannie came to the Landmarks Committee, and that was our big problem, was that it was 2 stories. Landmarks Preservation Commission originally said no. It has an impact on what other people feel that they could ask for their own use, for not-for-profit use, for anything else. And that's part of my issue, is this creep of extra height or penthouses that don't fit in. Or, I mean, I don't understand why, if Lo makes that suggestion and you're talking about being a good community member, that's not something that you would necessarily embrace. There are lots of people with their hands up, and I appreciate that. So I'm going to stop now. But yet, you didn't answer my question about how many residences are going to be in that building. And thank you.
I guess I can answer that question. It will be a single residence, and it is designed to accommodate an artist in residence, which is a program that, and maybe Jeannie can speak to this, that happens in other places, but doesn't happen so much in New York. So I don't know if Jeannie wants to talk a little bit about that, but the space itself, the kitchen will be on the 4th floor. Basically the sleeping area is on the 6th floor, the new roof addition, and that the 5th floor would be available as a workspace and support space for the artists.
Thank you. Next, let's go to Barbara Rutter.
Hi. Russell indicated that a few of us went to visit. I will say I was very disappointed that it was only 4 of us plus one guest. Sherry already said she was there. I am not a purist or as knowledgeable as my fellow community board people, who I respect very much for their knowledge. I do feel that zoning should support the use, that for me, I can't separate it. I think zoning should be a living thing. If you went to visit, it is, first of all, unbelievably magnificent. And the restoration, for those that care about preservation, the preservation of the way things were, bringing it back, the porte-cochere, and so was just beautifully done. The floors were just so magnificently done. The extension to the back, if I understand correctly, the back is not like townhouses that each have a garden and we worry about the extension, even though we saw this extension in a townhouse that would have bothered us. This was an ugly backyard, a utilitarian backyards that would not detract, as far as I can tell, of anything with beauty. The residents, I do know somebody that has in upstate New York that has residents, and an art coming to stay. And I gather it is just such an important part of their art experience that I think this can be a very exciting thing that will be there. The library was unbelievable and would be open for people to use. And even though this is commercial, and we talk about it being commercial, I really believe Jeannie, who was so excited about showing us, would want us to come and visit without me feeling that I have to buy one of the pieces that I probably couldn't afford, that I can't wait to go. And I was just talking to a friend and I said, I want to go and show you this beautiful piece. I really hope we approve it. This is just adding to our museum mile, our art area that we should be so proud of the Upper East Side. And I feel so strongly that this is something that would add to our community.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can we just unmute our architect so that questions have arisen where it would have been helpful if he could participate? And
he's unmuted already.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
So hi, it's Jim Herr from Raphael Vinoli Architects. We'd like to share our screen and show you one simple image, which may help give some context to the roof.
Go ahead, you can share your screen.
Great. So this is an image of the proposed rooftop addition on the right there. And in context, you can see that this portion of the district is surrounded by, you can see just to the right, a 200-foot, 210-foot tower. And we have another rooftop addition on Fifth Avenue, which is 3 feet lower than us. And then you can see to the east, a 400-foot tower, which actually is the eyesore of the community, I would say, but which actually casts shadows, and so I think that the context that that portion of our rooftop addition, which is only 15 feet above the existing height of the mansard, which is the green roof. There's the mansard there, Mike is pointing at, does have very insignificant impact to the light and air of the surrounding buildings. Thank you.
Okay, let's go next to Kaz Spagnoletti.
Yeah, I'm going to keep my question simple. You're calling it the Salon 94, but yet you're on 89th. Can I assume that you were going to 94th Street and then you weren't able to, and that's why you're coming before us for 89?
No, I will answer that question. I started my business as a gallerist on 94th Street, which is where I live, over 20 years ago. I grew out of this space and moved downtown to the Bowery, and then now am consolidating all of these spaces into 89th Street. And the name comes from the original salon, which is on 94th Street. And I titled it Salon because I really believe in dialogue. And I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight and listening, and thank everybody for coming to visit. I have to say, for all of those of you who did visit and kind of come up to the roof and see what we were doing, I think that you have all really said it very well, that our impact is not only minimal, but that we really hope to improve the views, and for those of that will actually be able to see. And thank you. So.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next, let's go to Elizabeth Rose.
Thank you, Russell. I want to actually briefly comment on what the architect just said about adjacent buildings being taller. And of course, adjacent buildings are taller because the adjacent buildings on Fifth Avenue are in an R10 zone, not an R8B zone. And the building on Madison Avenue that's 400 feet is also not in an R8B zone. So what you're saying is, because we're close to other zones that are taller, it should be okay for us to go taller too, because we're still contextual. And I wonder what that argument taken to other locations will do to lots of buildings that are one building in from whatever higher zone exists on the avenue. That said, I would like to propose a resolution. I think that the use case of a commercial gallery is totally appropriate here, and fits with the context of all of the art in the area. And I've heard wonderful things about the shows at this location. It also sounds like the physical building itself is designed in a way that you do need to create other spaces for the administration, for bathrooms, for accessibility. And I think the applicant made their case extremely well for those things. So I would like to propose a resolution to approve all of the waivers requested, except for the addition of the 6th-story penthouse, which everything else is basically fitting within either horizontal planes that are already in place or vertical planes that are already in place because of the false mansard, and that the commercial aspect, this is a truly wonderful repurposing of this building. So I would like to make a motion that we approve all aspects of the waivers except for the addition of a 6th floor penthouse.
I'm sorry to interrupt. May I just respond to one thing Ms. Rose said? If that's okay.
Yeah, I see Michelle has seconded the motion, but yeah, go ahead.
I just want to point out that actually we're 40 feet wide, 23 feet of our site is within the R10, where the maximum building height is 210 feet. I just want to put that out there.
That was clear from the presentation last week.
Okay, great.
Nevertheless, the building is within the R8B zone.
Right, next, let's go to Peter Patch.
I'm pausing slightly because I actually would like to support the applicant entirely. So I agree with everything that was just said, except I would also, Elizabeth's comments, I would also be totally comfortable with the addition. I understand it's a little bit of an exception, but I also want to acknowledge and recognize Lo Vandervalk and the Carnegie Hill neighbors, who to me have always shown a very high level of interest and engagement in the well-being and welfare of the Upper East Side and Carnegie Hill in particular. And therefore, I would encourage the applicant to consider the modifications he's proposing. Purely encourage it, not in any sense require it. Leave that to discretion judgment of the applicant. Thank you.
I'll just say thank you so much. We are Lo. It is we have started out rocky 2 years ago, and we have really enjoyed one another and our dialogue since, and I thank him for his work. It's pretty remarkable how knowledgeable he is about the entire neighborhood and everything going on. We are looking very much to what he proposed. He just sent us his notes just a few days ago, so we are in dialogue with the architect. And in fact, what he proposes is that 4 feet of moving that 4 feet. Seems pretty doable if we can, and we're going to look very seriously at it. And so we're very appreciative of kind of his sense of architecture as well.
Right, Rebecca Dangor has a point of information, so we're going to go to her so she can do that.
This is for Elizabeth. I'd just like clarification on your resolution. Are we saying that we are not approving the height, or are we does your resolution only cover the other aspects of the proposal?
Sorry, Elizabeth is muted. I'll just say I had understood the motion as presented as saying we approve essentially everything other than the height above the 5th floor. So that's 6th floor addition. And then for that, I gather we're essentially disapproving that aspect of it. But Elizabeth, you can clarify if that's correct.
That is what I intended.
Okay, so
And then,
thank
yeah.
you.
Sure. And then to Peter's point, I think we can vote on those aspects of the resolution separately too. So let's go next to Carolina Tejo.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I recently read that the owner of Salon 94 had forged a partnership with 3 other gallerists here in the city, making basically what the art world is calling part of this like blue chip gallery sector, and that it had been kept very much under wraps, and that she's consolidating a lot of this real estate footprint alongside with these other folks who are actually closing down their galleries. And from my understanding, this seems, according to a lot of people within the art world, and I know we're talking about zoning and so on, but I thought this was an important thing to bring up just so that we know kind of what the players involved are really kind of doing at the end of the day. And basically my understanding is that this gallery creation that they have now, LGDR, it was designed to minimize the overhead and maximize the profits. And that a lot of the artists that basically have been represented at Salon 94 currently are no longer going to be represented, or at least, and this comes straight from the gallery owner when the media reached out, saying that they will represent some names, but considerably fewer than their pre-merger. Therefore, they're trying to find other spaces for artists. So this contradicts fully on what we're trying to do. Again, something else that kind of was spoken about within the art world was that this was really tightly guarded. A lot of the artists that have worked with her did not know that this was happening, and they were kind of blindsided. And when people asked, they basically were told that they were making things up and that they were just rumors. So I thought it was just important to kind of touch upon that, because if we're making these expansions under the ruse that it's going to be so that we can go ahead and have more artists and women and people of color represented, from my understanding, it seems to be the complete opposite, that this partnership is really going to be bringing strategic services to like collectors, artists, and institutions and private companies and wealthy family offices, and not just folks who live in the neighborhood. That was all. Thank you.
Oh, so
Is this a news article that you're talking about? Sorry, we'll let you respond. Just
I mean, I would like to.
Are you talking about it? Yeah, sorry, Carolina, is there a particular news article that you're talking about?
Yes, there's pieces in the Times and in Art News.
Okay.
So I would like to say that in my presentation, I showed the New York Times article and introduced my 3 partners, longtime friends and colleagues who have independently done their own good work in the art world. I have sent out to my entire mail list my intentions, and there is nothing hidden in what I am doing. The New York Times did not say this was under wraps. We have been completely transparent in what we are doing. The art world has had an enormous consolidation. I plan on doing the work that I have been doing. I'm very happy to share my program with you, but I think that it will only, continue and be even better and more exciting, because I have wonderful partners who are dedicated to diversity, to performance, to poetry, and part of my business has always been in the art advisory services. And that has been part of my 20-year career and something I'm incredibly proud of. So you are welcome to come and visit me, and I will be very happy to share whatever you would like to know. But in fact, the New York Times article, everybody please feel free to look at it. But I don't plan on changing too much. So I am who, I do what I do, and I've been doing it for 20 years. I'm going to continue to.
Thanks. Barbara Rutter has a point of information.
I think you answered it. I agree 100% with Peter Patch. How do we vote on the resolution that Elizabeth did? It seems to me if you vote yes, you're saying no to the full thing. So are we dividing the resolution into two parts?
Yeah, we're going to vote on the two parts. We'll vote on the two parts.
That's my point. Okay, thank you.
Okay, next let's go to Michelle Birnbaum.
Thank you. Firstly, let me say I have no problem with a gallery having partners, trying to maximize their profits, working well with partners. It does not diminish them in any way, the fact that they're functioning as capitalists. So I don't see anything sinister about that, and I wish them very well. I too need further clarification because of this. I seconded Elizabeth's resolution, but my hope for part 2 was that we could not vote on it tonight and maybe wait until we get an answer on Lowe's request, because that's what he's basically talking about. So I would be very comfortable voting on Elizabeth's resolution, because I sense agreement on there, and I think we could get an affirmative vote. But I see no harm in waiting and not making a hasty decision on part 2, because I think some of us would be more comfortable supporting this if we knew that they complied, with Lowe's suggestions. So I would suggest, I don't want to move to table because that's always a dramatic thing to do, but I would ask respectfully that we put that part 2 off for another day. And they don't have to come back. We don't have to make a big deal over it. We can even maybe do it in old business at the full board. And because they would have had enough time to answer Lowe it anyway, we can get that information and vote on that next week.
So yeah, I would say, well, first, I didn't understand Lowe to be asking for a negative resolution necessarily, but what I would say is, I think what we can do is we can vote tonight on whatever resolutions come up tonight, and if ultimately there isn't an approval of that aspect of it, then I think we can then potentially take up a sort of different version of it if that's what results from the discussions with Carnegie Hill neighbors. But I think unless let's do
but we would need a separate, in other words, if you're dealing with part 2 tonight, you're not presuming that because this was a vote to approve part 1, that the other is a vote to disapprove part 2. You would have to make that as a separate resolution. It may be an A and a B, but it has to be a separate resolution. Affirmative on part A, support on part A doesn't assume a disapproval or a concern or anything on part B. But I think we have an opportunity at not much inconvenience to anybody to just not continue it. We should have our discussion tonight and then have our resolution next week. I'm sure by then they will have an answer for Lowe, and then all questions will have been asked with no mystery and nothing lost. I think everybody gains.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, look, the applicant has come back, they've been here now 2 months in a row. I think, it's ultimately sort of up to them, but I think basically, we're going to have a vote on the first part of the resolution and on the second part of the resolution, and depending on how the vote goes. So just for example, if we approve both parts of the resolution, then, maybe that does present an opportunity for a discussion of a sort of different version of the height, and that sixth floor that's different from what we're looking at now, that we could then, look at it at the next meeting and vote on it then. But I think basically until we know what the outcome of the current resolution is, I don't think we necessarily have to sort of assume that we'll bring them back. And again, we've already asked this applicant.
No, I agree with you, Russell. I agree with you. I don't think they need come back. I think we can have because there's no opportunity for them to speak. We don't need the presentation again. All our questions have been answered. Yeah. The only issue is our decision. And I'm just proposing a method of getting to that decision and taking all information into account.
Understood.
And low is important.
Understood. Yeah. But what I would say is I think let's see what the outcome of the various votes are tonight, and we'll have votes on whatever the resolution is. And I think if that outcome or result is one that's sort of consistent with potentially having another vote at another time, then, we can sort of take it from there. But I think in the first instance, let's operate with what we have and the resolution that's in front of us and whatever other resolutions we end up with. So let's go to Felice Farber next.
Thank you. So I was one of the few people that did go on the tour, and like Shari and Barbara have said, it is a beautiful renovation. It is tasteful. They are looking to have the least impact on the community. The rooftop addition, it's being described in discussion. It sounds like this, huge addition. It's not. It's relatively small. It's tasteful. It fits in with the surrounding courtyard area. It's actually, she's trying to do it within getting appropriate permits. There are other additions that are bigger that have been added that have not been done with the appropriate permitting process. So I would encourage us to approve the entire proposal, including the rooftop addition. It's tasteful, and it's, I think, a benefit to the community.
Thanks. All right, next let's go to Elaine Walsh.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions and comments. One, for the Fifth Avenue apartment building, at what point do the lot line windows configure with the height of 3 East 89th Street? Meaning, how many, if any, are blocked by the height addition? Does anybody know?
Yes, Jim, do you want to take that?
Yeah. Before Jim talks, I just want to say those are not lot line windows. They're east-facing windows that are 50 plus feet from our lot line. And they get all their required light and air from their interior court on their lot. I just want to put that out there just for context.
But how high is your building related to where we begin to see them level off with the Fifth Avenue building?
Hi, this
is it 10th floor? Is it on the 6th floor? Tell me where it hits.
Yeah, they're answering.
So, hi, this is Jim from Raphael Vanilli Architects. So, from what we understand, the floors that are in front of the that portion of the addition is floors 8, 9, and 10.
Okay, and these particular floors, when residents purchased, had no assumption that there would be anything at their level given the RAB and the historic district. Is that correct?
Oh.
Excuse me?
Jim, can you pull up the aerial view? Because I think there's already a 5th floor that obstructs the views from those windows. The building already extends up 5 floors. So there's one additional floor for a portion of those east-facing windows. And maybe the aerial view is the best. I think it's I think it's worth pointing out that you can see where those east facing windows are. And Jim, maybe with the cursor, sorry, this is Cass Stackelberg from Higgins Gray Spartan Partners. You can see where those 8th, 9th, and 10th floor windows are. As Stuart said, they're 55 feet away. There is a portion of the fifth. There is the portion of the 5th floor currently that extends up and is in the direct line of those windows. But if you draw a straight line due east from those windows, the views are blocked by the apartment buildings on Madison Avenue, and even the direct daylight is blocked by those views. It's not really blocked by this addition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would zoom in a little more just to make it a little clearer for everybody.
I can see what you're saying. But if I lived in those buildings, it doesn't matter if I can see to Madison Avenue. I'm asking you, what will impact as you go up? And that's an important piece for the people who live there. That's my question. So you're saying, well, it doesn't really matter because they still have a view of Fifth Avenue. Is that what you're saying?
I did not say that. No, I'm just pointing out that there's a portion of the building, and perhaps, Jim, you could sketch over this. There is a portion of the building, 3 East 8th and 9th Street, that extends up 5 stories. It's the whole back wing. It was built as a studio, a very small studio for Anna Hyatt Huntington. There's a portion of that extends across the roof. So the additional area is just the enclosure above that red line. So that's the area that is being blocked. But I'll also make a point, and I think you all know this certainly from the landmark side of things, but these projects are not regulated from somebody's 12th floor apartment. Landmarks don't regulate from people's personal apartments, nor does this process regulate these reviews from an individual's apartment. The effect is really, and your findings are about the impact to light and air. And I think when you zoom out, the direct sunlight from the east, when there is light coming from that direction, is already blocked. It's already blocked by 45 East 8th and 9th Street. It is not the penthouse that's blocking direct light into those east facing windows. At the 400 feet of the building on the east side of Madison Avenue, when the sun is to the east of that, is blocking the light, not the penthouse. It is that building. Then as the sun is further south in the sky, it's coming in at an angle and is not blocked by the penthouse either. So, there is, an addition on that roof that is not there today, that is proposed, that is 55 feet away and directly across from those windows, looking out of the 8th or the 9th or 10th floor windows, those would be in the line of sight. But the light, direct sunlight, is being blocked by other buildings in the neighborhood.
Yes, but that's not what I'm asking. I understand what you're saying. And yes, the Madison Avenue 45 East 89th is a tall building. But what I'm saying is the people who live there anticipated they would have not bright light, but a view. And by your extension, it's impacting them. 1. 2, what we're looking at is a zoning issue. And what you're asking is really to impinge on R8B, which has been a long fought zoning fight for many years in the community. And you knowingly, even though I read your answers and I'm not happy with most of them, because you confiscate whatever you want to say with a lot of verbiage. But what I am saying is this is an R8B, you're intruding on it, it's eroding what the community has fought for years, and I do not understand why you need to go higher. That's my next question. My next one is, you talk about, first it says only a residence on the 6th floor. Then it talks about residents on the other floors. Now, with those residents, and I'm not sure if it's 4-5 or 3-4-5, what has been done to conform with fire department regulations as far as notifying them of an occupancy, but also if it's a dwelling, is there a bathroom, a kitchen, and a window in each of those units? And this goes to a very important part of the dwelling law. Please
Yes. So first, I will respond just to say that that it is not meant to be multiple residencies. And we have planned for a kitchen on the on floor 4. There are bathrooms, not to mention handicap bathrooms throughout the building. A library that's on 5. It is not built to be multiple dwellings, just so to be clear.
Is it a residence? If it's
It's not working as a residence. It is I mean, there's
so nobody will sleep over on those lower floors?
No, those lower floors are not to be slept in. They are to be used by the person on the 6th floor.
4 and
Elaine,
5
can you just let her
will
finish?
not
Yeah.
have an overnight sleep. Is that true?
They will not have an overnight sleep.
Okay, what about my other questions?
The other questions, sorry, can you repeat sorry, did somebody hear the other questions and can answer them responsibly?
What were you asking about fire department safety? You asked
Yeah,
questions.
because your C of O will have to identify you have residents living there so that if there was a fire, the fire department knows that they have to look for people.
Yes, we are going to be in compliance, of course, with the fire department. Yes.
And what about the R8B, your intrusion into that? Why is it necessary?
I have answered this several times, and I'll have Stuart do it, but the infrastructure of this building is not there of the existing building. And so we are requesting for infrastructure to support the program and the building.
And do you see this as a precedence for undermining R8B?
Let me answer that question because I think the testimony of Friends of the Upper East Side put this well. This will not serve as a precedent. This is a unique set of circumstances. What we are seeking is a specific special permit that is set forth in the city zoning, and what we were asking for is specifically allowed by the special permit. If we can make the findings, we have demonstrated that we can meet the findings. The underlying zoning won't change. It remains R8B. I mean, I'm not really sure, but most of our lot is within the R10. As I pointed out, you're allowed 200 feet, 210 feet in height. So the bottom line is that we believe we've demonstrated that we meet all the required findings of the special permit, which relate to impacts on the character of the area and on the light and air of the surrounding properties.
Okay. Will you agree to, if you
And
sell
Elaine,
the
let's
building?
make this the last question.
It will be. This is why this application should have come to the zoning committee to have questions and not gone to the full board. But my last question is, will you agree to put in there that if you sell the property, that the R8B is restricted to what you've planned now, and if you sell prior to this, the R8B will not be jeopardized?
This will not change the underlying zoning in any way, shape, or form. The way the special permit works is the City Planning Commission will approve the plans that you've seen. Those plans will be presented to the Department of Buildings. Jim, the architect, will share this with the Department of Buildings, and any approval, the Buildings Department is constrained by the approved plans by the special permit. So we can never do anything beyond what City Planning Commission and ultimately the City Council allows. Forever. And if we ever want to go higher, we need to go back, or anyone needs to go back to the City Planning Commission and file a whole new application and start the process all over again.
Let's go next to Anthony Cohen.
Okay. I'm having camera problems. I apologize. As at least one person has pointed out this evening, this is a zoning issue, not a question of the virtue of the applicant's intentions, which are not in doubt. And at the outset, I'd like to say I don't have any objection to the use waiver. A commercial gallery and a not-for-profit gallery are much the same in terms of real use. I also have no objection to filling in the volume to the west lot line for the building mechanicals. I'm not crazy about the increased rear yard infringement, but I am half persuaded to its necessity. That leaves the rooftop addition, which is a no for me. It violates the character of the original architecture. And as an architect, I would never suggest this kind of rooftop addition in this kind of location. And I think that Elizabeth Ashby noted earlier that we, the full board, rejected the penthouse some months ago. And further, I'd like to say, as comments and then a question, every circumstance is unique and every intrusion erodes and devalues our neighborhood character, every intrusion. So my question is, what would the applicant do if the application were to be denied? I understand that this is a hypothetical and lawyers don't like hypotheticals, but architects and planners always indulge in hypotheticals. So please indulge me. What are your alternative options? Abandoning the project, selling the property, moving the gallery to another location, or just making do with what space you can get? Thank you.
You know, it's a very, I can't answer that question, obviously. Only the owner can answer these questions, but I mean, you know, I'm not, all I could say is I suspect that, you know, if that were to happen, first of all, that can't happen because I know she's invested so much in this project and you know, and the building can't function without the additional infrastructure. She can't operate her operations, you know, without that. So
excuse me. I don't think anyone, or I don't think very many of us are objecting to increasing the infrastructure, increasing the volume to satisfy the infrastructure. I think that the objections, such as they are to the rooftop addition for the artist's residence. And I think Elizabeth pointed out that that among all of the cities in the world, New York is best suited to actually accommodate artists off-site in, as she pointed out, what are called hotels. And so I think that it's not that, it's literally the rooftop addition for the artist's residence, which seems to me to be not a necessary function. And okay, if it is, this is not an appropriate aesthetic for an addition to this particular building in this particular neighborhood. And that's all I have to say about it.
So thank you for your comments. I will say that the approval of these plans are really integral to the viability and the vision of this gallery. I have been there for 2 years. If you've come to visit, you will see that we are on top of each other. In offices, I have operations, I have marketing, I have curatorial.
No, it's not. And I'm sorry. And I don't mean to cut
Sorry,
you off.
Anthony,
Okay, you're right.
You are cutting her off.
And it is a very serious thing. We are trying to do something incredibly culturally important in this neighborhood. And this is a integral part of what will allow us to do our work and to do it with integrity and to do it with intelligence and with passion. We were approved by Landmarks. We went to Landmarks, and I will say that the plan that you all did not approve was then taken and well edited and worked on for weeks. We valued engineered it to the approval, to the unanimous approval of Landmarks. It was lauded. In fact, Landmarks was most excited about the penthouse addition. They were thrilled that Raphael Vignoli had his hand in it. They were thrilled that he had a small marking on this building. They felt that it absolutely was in keeping of the Carnegie neighborhood and the experience that is had around our neighborhood, around Museum Mile. So I am passionate about this project and about its integrity. And I think we have really, we receive you with open arms. And I'm not sure what else to say. I hope we've answered your questions as diligently as possible. So thank you so much.
As we're clearly speaking past each other, I have no other comment except to say that I will vote no. Thank you.
Thanks. Next, let's go to Rebecca Dangor.
I was going to make a motion, but I see Chuck's hand is up, so let's let him speak if he wants to add something first.
Okay, and then I guess we'll go back to you. So Chuck, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to make a substitute motion if it's seconded, I'd like to speak to it.
You have to tell us what it is.
What?
You have to tell us what the motion is first, right, before it can be seconded.
My substitute motion is going to be to approve the application and urge the applicant to implement the Carnegie Hill neighbors' suggestion for moving the penthouse, if at all possible. That's my substitute motion.
Okay. So, sorry, is there a second?
Billy and Felice.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Now, a couple of things here. First, this is a 74-711 process, and there's two processes here, right? And one is landmarks and improvements to a landmark building or a building in the landmark district, and the other is some zoning considerations. And the two really go together. And the idea is, I think, as we all know, that if someone really makes terrific improvements, then they're entitled to get some good consideration for zoning changes. And that's the process. And so asking for a special permit by itself is not really, should not really be a negative, number one. Number two, a special permit should be granted unless it has adverse impacts on the community. And the question is, what are the impacts of the community? There are a few buildings who are in the neighborhood who, as has been indicated, they're 55 feet or more apart, but they would have their view somewhat blocked very, in a minor way. That's one thing to consider, but I think the other thing to consider is, what does this do to the neighborhood? How does this enhance the neighborhood in many other ways? And we've heard a lot of testimony. We had museum directors and others in the immediate neighborhood say this would be a terrific addition to the neighborhood. And I think that it's important, frankly, particularly since New York is in a very difficult time. And I feel very strongly, I know most of us here do, that we'd like to see New York really come back to what it was. And I think it's important, if we have someone who's willing to make improvements the way this owner is willing to do it and is willing to commit to these kinds of things, and indicates that the only way to really make it happen is if there's enough room adequately to carry out the program that she believes ought to be carried out, then I think we ought to support that. And so I think we have many situations all over the city where people come to us looking for approvals and zoning variances and special permits. And I think this is one, and as I think someone else made the case, this doesn't set any precedent for anything. Every situation is different. We view every situation and it's under its special circumstances. And I think here we have an unusual situation where we have a person who's dedicated to bringing art to our area, to supporting artists. And I think it'll be an overall vast improvement or a continuing improvement, because we do have the Guggenheim and other museums, obviously. And so I think we ought to approve this project as it's been presented, with the admonition or the urging that they implement this, if the Carnegie Hill Neighbors proposal, if at all practical.
Okay, so your motion is substituted. I'll just, as a practical matter, given the differences between and similarities between the two motions, I'll still have us split the two aspects of the application. So let's go next to Rebecca Dangor, who had deferred to Chuck.
Okay, so then if you're still splitting them, I'd like to call to question on the first half, which is everything but that height addition.
Okay, is there a second?
A point of order here. There's a substitute motion I made. You can't split the vote. That was, you can't do that. You have to vote on the substitute motion. If it fails, then you get to the next one. But a substitute motion, you can't.
Yeah, but if there's
it doesn't make any sense the way to do that. I mean, parliamentary, it can't be done.
Yeah, if there's sorry, let me just clarify, because if there's a motion that essentially encompasses multiple items or aspects, and this is an application that has, I think, half a dozen components in terms of all the different, waivers and et cetera,
right,
that the applicant is seeking, my understanding is that you can always have a separate vote on each aspect of a question. And so, if you're moving to approve, you're essentially moving to approve every aspect of the zoning application that's being made.
No, I don't agree. Russell, it's the motion to approve the application. The application has a number of things in it, but that doesn't mean we have to consider each one individually. Sometimes what happens is in landmarks, they have a couple of different resolutions that we sometimes consider separately, or different provisions to the resolutions. But my resolution is to approve the whole thing with just the clause that urges them to do something. And I think that encompasses everything. We basically have one application in front of us. If we look at and there's been no motion made that like landmarks does, that we have A, B, C, D, and we approve this, we approve that, we disapprove this. That's not what we're dealing with here. I think we're dealing with one application, and I've made a motion to approve the whole thing. And if it fails, we have the motion that was made before.
So procedurally, can I move to separate the two questions as in conjunction with the motion that's on the floor?
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying we have a substitute motion. We have to vote on the substitute motion. And however that comes out, if it carries, then that's the end of it. If it doesn't, then we refer to the other motion, which the way it's structured could be separated.
Okay. So then, Rebecca, what is it that you want to do?
So then, seeing no other hands raised, I will reiterate my call to question on the substitute motion. in entirety.
Okay, is there a second to that?
Yes, Barry, cause.
Okay, so let's vote on calling the question.
Russell, you asked me to flag if somebody had I think Alita had a friendly amendment she wanted to add. I don't know if that's privileged.
I don't think a friendly amendment is a privileged issue. So, the question's been called on the motion that's on the floor. So I see 2 hands opposed to calling the question. So let's go to the secretaries.
Can we unmute Sandrea?
Sandra, you can unmute.
All right, greetings all. All right, please raise your hand if you are voting no, abstaining, or not voting for cause. Elizabeth,
No.
Lang,
No.
Michelle,
No.
Abraham,
Sorry, I apologize. I just want to stop you there. So there's been a question about what we're voting on. So this is Chuck's motion to approve the application in its entirety. So the whole application that's been presented to approve every aspect of it. So a yes is a yes on the application, and no is a no on the application. Sorry, go ahead.
start or should I restart then? Just
No, if folks want to change their vote based on the
Okay.
clarification I just offered, they can do that. But yeah, please go ahead.
okay.
That
I think
wasn't
Abraham,
no. That wasn't what I said, totally.
And also to urge the adoption of the changes that Carnegie Hill Neighbors has asked for. You're right. So that is part of it also.
all right, we're good now, okay. Elizabeth,
No.
Peggy,
No.
Sarah,
No.
Alita,
No.
Anthony,
No.
Carolina,
No, that's not me. I think this is going to carry, actually.
No, it's Carolina. No,
I'm sorry, Carolina, sorry.
no.
I'm not seeing any more hands. Come back with a tally of the votes. Thank you.
Okay, so I think how we proceed is going to depend on the result here. So we'll just give a few minutes.
There's no tally yet, and I'll let Sandrea report that, but the motion failed. I mean, the motion passed. The motion passed. I'm sorry. Apologies.
Okay. All right, so that I think concludes this item. So let's go to old business and new business. But I guess Alita has a question that may be a point of order, but go ahead.
I don't know that it's, I don't know what it is. I have a question about the propriety of Chuck proposing a resolution, given that he can't vote and couldn't vote because of a conflict of interest since he's a partner at the firm that represented the applicant. Chuck has a lot of sway. I don't know what the answer is. I just question whether that was something that was appropriate under the circumstances. Thank you. And I do have an item of old business that I'll get to when you're ready.
Okay, so yeah, I thought Chuck voted on this one, but in any event, I think the rules, the conflict rules of the board are that you can't vote, but you can still speak to motions. But I'll go to Chuck to respond.
Can I clarify? I have nothing to do with this application. I'm not voting for cause on the last representative from my firm. We have nothing to do with this. I have no conflict. I don't know anybody involved in this. This is the first time when they presented this, I have no connection with this. So I don't understand what Alita means by that. That was the last item.
Yeah, I think she got it. Okay, so I'm imagining Alita got confused between the last item and this item. So, okay, let's go to, so we'll do old business here, Kaz Spagnoletti.
No, I was going to move to adjourn, so I'll defer to anybody else, but I moved to adjourn after old and new.
Okay, let's go to Michelle Birnbaum and Sandrea. Once you have the final, tally, just let me know.
Yeah, I mean,
but in the meantime, let's go. No, it's mute Chuck. So go to Joe.
That's what I was going to ask. I don't want to adjourn. I want to know the tally.
Okay, we'll get the tally before we adjourn. Don't worry.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Let's go to Alita Camp.
I have 2 points. And Chuck, I'm so sorry. My big, bad, ugly bad. So I'm sorry. Russell, the restaurant issue that about the city council and the restaurant road. And also, I wonder if on all future applications where they talk about how tall a building is, if you could ask them to give it feet instead of stories, because they said 23 stories for the first application. I understand that that building is approaching 300 feet. Maybe the floors are more than 10 feet tall, but it's certainly misleading to say anything other than what's been accepted historically as the ratio of 10 feet per floor. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, as Alita alluded to, I was going to mention some new business, but I'll just say now. So I know that a lot of folks from the community and a lot of board members listened in and testified at the hearing that was held by the City Council on open restaurants. So what I'm trying to find out is the timing of that and the timing of when the council will act and when DOT will act to get a better sense of our timing in terms of how best for us to weigh in on that. And so once we know about what the timing is and how much time we have to do that, we'll be able to move ahead with that. So I would ask that we not have additional comments on that specifically. And if you have questions or comments about that, just let me know offline. But, the step one is just to figure out what the timing is going to be. So let's go to Sandrea.
Russell, can I just say I jumped the gun? I'm sorry, but I got nervous when someone moved to adjourn already. So I wanted to make sure that
Yeah, that's okay.
So
that's
sorry.
fine.
Thank you.
That's fine. That's okay.
Okay. Yes, our total is 28 yes and 10 no. Passed.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Rebecca Dangor.
I was going to second Cause's motion, but there are hands up, so I'll wait.
Okay, let's go to let's go to Rita Popper.
Just out of curiosity, has there been, the extended restaurants, what about the restaurants that have gone out of business and have left their structure into the roadbed, and they're empty, they're filled with garbage, and they're a place for a lot of homeless people or whatever. It's really rat infested. Is there any legislation that the people who left have to take away their structure? Or
So I think if there are, yeah, I mean, I think that's the larger question is one for another day and for a committee. I think if there are specific instances or specific structures that you're seeing, I would say, let Will and me know, and we'll follow up and get those dealt with. But I think the larger question of sort of how that's going to play into open restaurants or how it works now and that kind of stuff, I think we should take that up at a committee meeting and not.
The DOT does already have a program to remove them if they're abandoned. So just flag them for us, and we can flag them for the DOT.
Okay. Sandra, go ahead.
Oh, disregard, my hand was still up. Sorry.
That's okay. Michelle.
Yeah, I was going to just say I was at that hearing from start to finish. It started at 10. It ended, I guess, between 6:30 and 7. And the answer to your question about when they're going to take it up is that nobody seems to know. We had inquired as to when the hearing was just about 5 days before the hearing and got a response that nobody knew when the hearing was. And then the hearing was announced the next day. So I wish they'd be a little more forthcoming. Many people testified. There are a lot of parameters here. There's a lot of information. And I just want to put out there to the board that the resolution that we passed in favor of this, which was a 15 to 27 for, 15 against, I just want to put it on the record to say it was a very, very, very early resolution. And there is so much new information and clarified information that we should really, really hear, because I suspect if and when people would hear additional information, you might want to have another resolution. I think it was early, so I hope we have that opportunity.
Michelle, so the, well, first, okay, the resolution that we passed was just on the zoning text amendment component of it. So we haven't really acted yet on what the DOT rules are going to be and some of those specifics. I think that's something that we have started to look at and do need to look at, but we're going to do that. Let's not get into that more tonight. And we're going to follow up with the administration, and we'll follow up with our council members to get more info on what the timing is. And that way we're going to make sure that we have an opportunity to weigh in. So I don't want to have more.
No, I agree with you. I mean, that's perfectly fine, but I just want to say something. This zoning text amendment, we might still want to reconsider. It absolutely does away with the residential communities. And I don't think people understood that.
Well, all right. I disagree with you. On that. I mean, I think well, we don't have to get into it now, but yeah, I mean, the zoning text amendment was the zoning text amendment. The other aspects of it, we are definitely going to weigh in on, and we'll figure out what the timing should be there. So let me go to Marco.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
Okay, I am going to say that that's in order. So, and I gather Kaz is a second on that. So are there any opposed to adjourning? Okay, looks like we are adjourned. So thank you, everybody. And we will see you next week, if not before.